I claimed Bitcoin's update would allow illegal content storage. Totally wrong, but I did find a real hidden threat that nobody is talking about. Look, I've been obsessing over this core versus NOTs debate for weeks now. Since the last video, I spoke to people with much more technical experience than myself and read stuff I barely understood because I was genuinely worried I'd misled tons of people. I'll show you 5 key insights that completely flipped my perspective on this debate. But what really shocked me wasn't the technical stuff, it's the real threat to Bitcoin right now. And nobody is talking about this. But first, let me summarize this whole thing in a couple of sentences. Team NOTs argues Bitcoin is only money. They speak about the philosophy of Bitcoin and communicate pretty well to the masses. Team Core argues we can't currently do anything about spam, so we should spend our time on bigger things. They focus on the technical points, which is like another language to most of us. Before we dig into this, let me show you why I got this so wrong, and also why I could well be wrong again. Okay, let me start with something a little bit uncomfortable. Within days of publishing my core versus NOTs video, I realized I was the textbook example of the Dunning-Kruger'd effect. You know that graph where you start knowing nothing and then quickly climb to the peak of Mount Stupid where you're really confident but actually know very little? Yeah, that was me making the first video. Then the mysterious technician contacted me and reality hit hard. The technical details I thought I understood, I barely scratched the surface. I plummeted straight into the valley of despair. I'm slowly trying to claw my way back out, but to be honest, I'm not sure I'll ever actually really get there. Because here's the problem we all face. We're told as Bitcoiners, don't trust, verify. But to actually verify Bitcoin code, almost no normal person can do that. I certainly can't. So we end up trusting developers and technical people anyway. Quick note, I could still be falling for this trap, so do not blindly trust me. I will show you where I've got a lot of this information from in the description below though. But here's where it gets really tricky for us as humans. We naturally pick tribes and see everything through that filter. Think about football fans. 2 people can live in the same city, work the same job, be best friends at work, but put them in a pub where Man U plays Man City and, well, same people, same values, different tribes. I did the same thing with Bitcoin. I found NOTs advocates explaining things clearly and passionately.
I think we can win. I think we can replace central banking with Bitcoin and fix the incentive structure of the world. That's why I'm here. Make Bitcoin money again.
Meanwhile, core supporters seemed dismissive or overly technical.
And I feel like these types of discussions through analogies with matters like this should not be how we have these discussions, because it distorts the actual technical realities we're discussing.
So I picked the side that communicated better. Classic tribal mistake. In my first video, I think I conveyed the NOTs perspective pretty well. Now, I want to do my best to convey core's side fairly. Remember, I'm not picking a side here. I'm trying to find the facts and stay neutral to avoid that tribal bias. I know this video is going to receive backlash, but I think it's too important not to address. What I learned completely changed my perspective and honestly put my mind at ease. Because as the technician says, Core 30 is mainly a nothing burger. But there is still one real threat that's genuinely concerning, which I will show you soon. So with that bias awareness fresh in mind, please try to stay neutral here. Let me show you the technical reality I completely missed. Here's what Core 30 is actually doing. This gets into the weeds, but it's crucial to understand, so please try and stick with me here. To understand this, we first need to grasp the difference between consensus rules and policy rules. I'm going to use building construction as an analogy, and hopefully this will all make sense. Consensus rules are like physics and structural engineering laws. You can't build a house that floats because gravity will pull it down. You can't put a 50-ton concrete slab on wooden beams rated for 5 tons without it collapsing. These are unchangeable laws that decide what structures can actually exist. Policy rules are like local building codes and permits. You could technically extend your house and make it twice as big. Nothing physically stops you, but without planning permission, it's not legal and you'll face consequences. In Bitcoin, consensus rules determine what miners can include in valid blocks. Policy rules determine what individual nodes will send or relay to other nodes. Here's the crucial part I missed. For 11 years, Bitcoin nodes have had a policy rule limiting op return data to 80 bytes. But there's actually no hard consensus limit on op return size at all. The maximum transaction size is also just another policy rule, not a consensus rule. In consensus, there's only what's called a maximum block weight limit. So theoretically, op return could be up to 1 megabyte in consensus rules. Do you need proof that this is already possible? Someone just demonstrated this by storing 980 kilobytes in a single op return transaction on Bitcoin. It was always technically possible. We discussed this 100 kilobyte number because that's the maximum you'll be able to relay without special tricks after core 30. And it was previously 80 bytes. If you remember previous video, I said it's 1,250 times bigger, which is true. Core 30 just aligns the policy rules closer to what always technically was possible anyway. But here's what completely flipped my understanding since the last video. While everyone's arguing about this 80 bytes to 100 kilobyte change, there's already a completely different method for storing up to 400 kilobyte files on Bitcoin right now. And it gets a 75% discount on fees. That method uses what's called inscriptions through witness data, a completely different part of the transaction. This exploits features from both the SegWit upgrade in 2017 and the Taproot upgrade in 2021. Both upgrades are important to reach that 400 kilobyte size. Now, without getting too much in the weeds here, just note both upgrades have big advantages for Bitcoin. SegWit enabled the Lightning Network, which is crucial for faster payments and scaling Bitcoin to the masses. Taproot made transactions more private and efficient and enabled better smart contracts through something called Schnorr, signature, and mast. But we're not going to go there. These transactions already spread normally through Bitcoin core nodes today, but Knots actually filters these inscription transactions. They're considered non-standard by Knots and won't be relayed. So why doesn't Core just filter this too? I will answer this, I promise. But currently Core developers are sitting there thinking, why are we arguing about allowing 100 kilobyte files through the expensive clean method when 400 kilobyte files are already flowing through the cheap, messy method on Core nodes? Remember in my previous video, this is that method which bloats the UTXO, basically the phone book, which you have to look through every time a transaction happens. In their eyes, it's like arguing about whether we should allow people to pay using the main entrance to a music festival, while leaving a massive hole in the fence at the back where people are already flooding in. This is why technically minded people find this debate so frustrating. The horse has already left the barn on Core nodes, but we're arguing about locking a different barn door entirely. The real question isn't whether we can stop large data storage on Bitcoin. We can't without major consensus changes that could break other things, although we will look into potential solutions soon. The real question is whether we want to incentivize people to use the less harmful method. So we've established the technical reality. Now, let me show you what's actually happening already with spam that proves this whole debate is backwards. So how are people flooding in through that massive hole at the back? Let me show you real examples that are already stored on Bitcoin right now. 102 kilobytes animated GIF and a 390 kilobyte high resolution JPEG. And you can see way more on websites like Audiscam, which is just a tool to see encrypted inscriptions images on Bitcoin. I'm honestly not cherry picking these, as you can see for yourself. Just look for a high quality image, click on it, and you'll see it's probably over 100 kilobytes. Now, the way the technician explained this to me is important for understanding the legal concerns people have. The argument some people make is that with the current inscriptions, you have plausible deniability because the data isn't stored consecutively. With op return, you're more directly helping distribute complete files. But when you dig into this technically, it falls apart. Current inscriptions store data like this: data, vertical bar, data, vertical bar, data, broken into chunks with separators. In reality, it looks like this. Some people worry that op return makes you more legally liable because it stores data like this: data, 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 all consecutive without separators. Bitcoin Core already encrypts, scrambles all blockchain data on your disk. So the consecutive storage concern doesn't hold up. But here's the thing. Tools like Audiscan already exist where you can see all the images and files stored on Bitcoin right now. If you will be legally liable after Core 30, you will surely be just as legally liable now. And also, as Habovstiak claims, like if you have an illegal picture and then change every 173rd pixel to a red dot, or the vertical bar in this instance, does that mean this picture is no longer illegal? Legal liability concerns don't hold up. This brings us to the ease of use argument. And this reveals why I had got this backwards. People claim using OP_RETURN will make file storage much easier, but inscriptions already have simple click button, select file, send software available today. Meanwhile, no mainstream wallets support large OP_RETURN transactions. Developers would need to build new software specifically for this purpose. Sure, they probably will eventually, it wouldn't take that long. But currently, inscriptions are already doing exactly what people are worried about, and these transactions relay normally through core nodes, though not filter them. Remember, I'll show you why core doesn't filter them soon. But the economics show exactly why core developers are frustrated. Current inscriptions exploit something called the SegWit witness discount, where witness data gets a 75% fee reduction. This means a 100 kilobyte inscription pays fees equivalent to only about 25 kilobytes of regular transcription data. With OP_RETURN, there's no discount. 100 kilobytes of OP_RETURN file pays the full price for 100 kilobytes of data. The inscription method is dramatically cheaper per byte. This raises the obvious question: why would spammers choose the more expensive OP_RETURN option? They probably won't. And that's exactly why core developers are getting so fed up with this debate. Their point is, if spammers aren't going to use it anyway, why are we arguing about this? The reason core wants to make this change is for legitimate use cases. For example, companies like Citria need around 160 bytes for specific protocols. These actors would prefer not to pollute the UTXO set and are willing to pay full price. But it's not just inscriptions, there are other UTX set pollutants that may or may not have been prevented with a bigger OP_RETURN, such as this. But here's where the NOTS argument gets interesting. They say, if you need such minimal data, just 160 bytes, why are you making such a huge jump to 100,000 bytes for one specific company? And they have a point about the broader impact. The UTXO set has ballooned from about 4 gigabytes to 12 gigabytes since ordinals, and inscriptions exploded in 2023. This matters because even if you run a pruned node to save disk space, you still have to store the entire UTXO set. There's no way to prune it. If all this data was stored in OP_RETURN instead, pruned nodes wouldn't need to store any of this bloat. So the NOTS argument becomes, you've allowed the UTXO set to get this massive over 2 years without doing anything about it. Now you want to make a change that, by your own admission, won't even get spammers to switch methods. So what's the point? And the core response is typically, it does help. It's the less harmful method. Some good actors will use it. We might as well make it available. Round and round and round we go. The bottom line is, illicit material like CSAM is already technically possible today on core nodes. The things preventing it are most likely personal morals and the fear of prosecution, if traceable. Remember, Bitcoin is pseudonymous, not anonymous. I struggle to say those words. The exact same legal and moral considerations that prevent people from storing illicit content via inscriptions would apply to OP_RETURN. Nothing fundamental changes about the risks or deterrents. But what about the BSV case where the same change saw CSAM stored instantly? BSV doesn't have SegWit, so OP_RETURN was the only way to store large data there, unlike Bitcoin, which already has witness data methods. So for BSV, this really did open the floodgates. For Bitcoin, remember, the floodgates are already open. What's really happening here is we're debating the legal implications of a more expensive, less harmful method, while the cheaper, more damaging method already exists and operates freely on core nodes. But surely there are solutions to all this spam, right? Well, that's where things get really complicated. We've seen the current situation. Now, here's why fixing it is harder than anyone wants to admit. Before we talk about solutions, let's put things in perspective. Data storage attacks on Bitcoin aren't new. They've been happening for over a decade. In 2011, someone stored the Bitcoin logo. In 2013, the Nelson Mandela image. The big coordinated attacks in 2015 cost attackers $49,000 and severely disrupted the network. The current inscription phenomenon is just the latest iteration of a pattern we've seen before. This article from BitMEX sums up the issue. If an attacker or spammer wants to outbid other users, they can, and we should embrace the reality. Spam budgets do not last forever, and many of the people investing in blockchain images are likely to collectively lose millions of dollars. People will learn hard lessons, and then Bitcoin will be stronger from it. And here's what always happens. Fees rise. Legit Bitcoin users move to layer 2 solutions like Lightning, spam budgets get exhausted, fees get cheaper, and Bitcoin gets stronger. We're actually seeing this right now. Many blocks are half empty because users established themselves on Lightning during previous spam periods. So, is there a solution? One that CoinJoin Chris suggests is,
I think that we should just not assume that miners are hostile, and we should just talk to them like adults and say, hey, as users, we've decided that, these transactions are abusive, and so, it would be great if you could help us rate limit them.
Shinobi's rebuttal to this is,
the only communication with miners in terms of preference of what you will or will not accept that matters in any way is what is in a block. Are you willing to actually invalidate a block and cause an economic penalty for that miner? Without doing that, it is meaningless. They will get the transactions somewhere else.
Right, so let's try and put this into English for us mere normies. The reality is that there are now around 4 main methods for storing data on Bitcoin. 1, taproot inscriptions. Remember, 400 kilobytes of blocks with a 75% fee discount. 2 is the op return, currently 80 bytes, Core 30 removes the policy limit. 3, the fake addresses convert image data into Bitcoin addresses. And 4, data in private keys with weak signatures, deliberately vulnerable signatures. Plus there are workaround services like Slipstream, Marathon's paid service, and Libra relay nodes that bypass normal filtering entirely. But just note there are many other ways of adding data. These are just the main 4 at the moment. Note, some people may include BRC20 tokens as another method, but these are just a specific type of taproot inscription. Instead of storing images, they store JSON text data, while they create massive UTXO bloat because thousands can fit in a single block. The underlying storage technique is identical to regular inscriptions. Do you see why this is so hard to don't trust, verify? So remember the obvious question from earlier? Why don't core nodes just filter all these methods like Knots does? Right, okay, now this is where it gets even more advanced, but it's important to be aware of this, otherwise it's confusing why everyone doesn't just run Knots. Knots filters inscriptions by looking for a specific pattern, op_0, op_if, followed by data pushes, closed with op_endif. But this filter is easily bypassed. Inscription creators could simply change to op_0, op1, opdrop, opif, or any of the many other variations, which does the same thing but avoids the filter. This is where we hit the whack-a-mole problem. Since Bitcoin Core's code is open source, attackers can see any new filters before they're even released and adapt their methods ahead of time. Even if Core wanted to implement comprehensive filtering, look at how long it takes. Core 30, one small change in their eyes, may take 3+ years to reach 50% of nodes. It takes years to get widespread adoption for any change. Meanwhile, attackers can adapt within days or weeks. It's an asymmetric battle where defense moves slowly, but attack moves quickly. As Peter Todd explains,
I mean, certainly if Bitcoin was a centralized system, absolutely we could go stop inscriptions and all kinds of stuff, but it isn't. And until I see someone propose a genuine consensus change to filter out data, well, I just have to go with what's possible. This discussion about op return is a very simple technical discussion.
This is one of Core's main arguments, that filtering becomes a losing game where defenders invest significant resources in solutions that quickly get sidestepped. Now, there are some real solutions to spam being discussed. 1, remove the SegWit discount via a soft fork. It makes inscriptions more expensive. 2, proof of public key schemes, which prevents fake address storage. 3, user configurable filters via config files. Or 4, widespread adoption of Stratum v2 or Datum for mining decentralization. But all of these face significant adoption and technical challenges. The mining decentralization point is crucial. As Shinobi, Coreside, puts it,
Bitcoin's entire nature as a system is predicated on the motivation of every actor being their self-interest, making profit. If you are making the claim that miners must act altruistically, morally, leave money on the table, and not do the most profitable thing, then you are logically arguing Bitcoin is a failed project. So at the end of the day, we should just do this.
the bottom line is spam pays miners. Miners need to make money to stay in business. So what should we actually be doing right now? 1, supporting Stratum v2 development and Datum by running miners using the ocean pool. 2, spending more time to actually don't trust and verify. 3, run a node, NOTs or core. Both help with decentralization. There are a couple more important things we should be doing, but before I give you the full action plan, we need to understand what the real threat actually is, because once you see it, this part will make much more sense. So I've shown you the technical side, the current reality, and why solutions are hard, but none of them is the real problem from all of this. So here's the question that really matters. Will illicit material be more likely after Core 30? If you've understood everything I've just explained, which honestly isn't easy, you probably think I'm going to say the answer is no. Remember, as the technician said all along, this is a massive nothing burger from a technical perspective. But paradoxically, the answer is actually yes, but not for technical reasons. So here's what genuinely keeps me up at night. This debate has created the perfect storm for bad actors to actually do what we're all worried about. Not because it's technically easier, but because they're incentivized to prove a point and tear the community apart. What I mean is this. Someone with technical know-how who's gotten worked up in this debate and is on the team NOTs might be incentivized to do the exact attack everyone's worried about if this update happens. They could publish illicit material via op return, then turn around and say, see, I told you so. When in reality, this was always technically possible anyway. And I have unknowingly contributed to this with my first video. Even though I tried to stay unbiased, I potentially added fuel to this fire of outrage between NOTs and core. So what are those other couple of things we should be doing? First, we need to focus on not creating divisions between Bitcoiners. We need to focus on not spreading misinformation. Don't be like me. Actually do the work before sharing content, or at the very least, get a technical point of view first. And 2, keep personal attacks out of everything. I even said that in my last video, and I received comments like this. At first I thought, fair enough, free world and all that, but actually, no, this isn't okay. Here's my question to you. If you're feeling like this, what do you think you're actually going to achieve by dishing out personal attacks? I get it, this does seem really serious. Just even from my own perspective a couple of weeks ago, it seems super threatening. But if I'm honest, I think on some level I knew how that last video would land, and I didn't really understand all the technicalities, if I'm being honest. I still don't. Everything I just said could still be really wrong because I don't know how to read code. So do I think this whole debate has been really bad? To be honest, not really, because a lot of people have started to run nodes, including myself. I've learned way more about Bitcoin. Remember, I'm not on one team or the other. I'm just trying to find the actual truth and share it with people, because this has still been so confusing to me. If you can pick apart the technical aspects that I've shared in this video, I'm all for listening and learning more. But my question to you is, what world do you want to see in the future? I asked myself this question a lot recently, and it's led me to spend more and more time within the Bitcoin ecosystem. It's led me to spend my time on Nostr instead of other social media platforms, because I don't want to contribute to the way the world is going right now. I can see the world we could be building, as you can see in video 6, but only if people like you and me stay focused. Here's the bottom line. People see Core 30 as opening the floodgates, words I even used in my previous video. But the reality is the floodgates have been open for years with inscriptions on core nodes. We're arguing about removing minor friction from a more expensive, less harmful method, while the easier, cheaper, more damaging method remains unchanged. Again, to quote the technician, it's a nothing burger. But what's potentially becoming a real threat is this divide in the Bitcoin community. I see this as very similar to what's happening in the world right now. People tearing each other apart, blaming immigrants, blaming poor people, blaming people from different religions or cultures. Meanwhile, the real enemy, the state, the Federal Reserve, is left to do whatever they want. All of us, whether we're on Team Knots or Team Core, we're all part of Bitcoin. We should all be on the same team. There's only one enemy in all of this, and we cannot get sidetracked from that: the people controlling the money. If this is something you're serious about, there are 3 very simple things that most Bitcoiners should do, but most of them don't. To see what they are, you need to watch this video next. The time to act is now, not when the issues actually do arise and it becomes an uphill battle. I just want to say a massive thanks to the technician. There were many times where he realized how complicated he was getting, but he answered every question I had and put up with me.